While we're all distracted by trumped up charges, Wall Street is quietly buying up your homes. Reality and centralized power continues uninterrupted. We're talking specifically today about Wall Street buying up family homes and how that relates to the Great Reset agenda. You will own nothing, but will you be happy? Not with escalating rents, not if by 2030, 40% of family homes are owned by the financial sector. This is a significant shift in the balance of power. These are the kind of things that will happen whether you have a Republican in the White House or a Democrat in the White House, because we believe they're part of a corporate globalist agenda that will not be interrupted while we're distracted by sectarian politics. Let's get into it.
For years, John and Angie Collier saved.
Oh, this is nice.
Eager to buy a first home in Fishers, Indiana, attracted by the good schools and proximity to work. But pursuing the American dream has proved daunting, as real estate investment groups buy up houses in cash and rent them out, in some cases, to the very families who dreamed of owning them.
In a sense, it is our sweetness and innocence that defines us. We don't fully understand the way that the financial world works, that houses are being bought up, that agricultural land is being bought up. We live on a layer of reality that prevents us from accessing the bigger and perhaps more significant picture when it comes to determining the outcomes of our lives. And here, when it comes to those most basic of amenities, the basis of Maslow's pyramid of needs, shelter, even there, true power is getting involved. True power is buying up property. True power may prevent you from having a home.
In January, 33% of all homes purchased in the U.S. were bought by investors.
43, Illuminati! Illuminati!
Often Wall Street-backed companies with multi-billion-dollar funds. The Colliers currently rent in a town near Fishers from one of the nation's biggest house rental companies. 4 times in recent weeks, they've been outbid by investors with all-cash offers.
It can be, discouraging when you get overbid by, companies.
How do you save when you're spending $2,200 a month just to rent?
So these companies have you on both ends.
Yeah, it's definitely a conundrum.
Good old Mr. Collier, smiling his way to homelessness.
In some Fishers neighborhoods, investors own more than half of the homes, according to realtor Laura Turner.
This is one of the neighborhoods that investors have really targeted. They're coming in, they're buying it at cash, and then they're going to hold them as rentals.
Remember something as fundamental as Julian Assange's claim that the function of government is to extract public money and put it into private hands. And these sort of simple maxims help me to understand the nature of reality, i.e., in this instance, the function of real estate development ought to be to provide homes for ordinary Americans. And one might imagine that in the 1950s, for all of its cultural problems and challenges, it was a simpler metric or mechanic that existed between the construction industry and the American citizen or consumer. But now the financial industry has become so deregulated and sort of terrifying and vast. It's like, hang on a minute, if we buy up all the homes, then we'll be able to profit by 5%. It's like some terrible, terrible mathematics that's revealed that you should just fuck ordinary people to death.
Fishers Mayor Scott Fadness is frustrated by the surge of distant, faceless landlords.
What's that coming over the hill? That's just the surge of distant landlords. But what about this featureless blank expanse? Oh, they're faceless. Don't let that worry you, though. The fact that they're not participating in humanity. Oh, okay. Do you think they're going to be reasonable if I'm late on the rent? I don't know. Try and tell from looking at his face.
So take, for instance, if you have a high grass and weed issue, a code enforcement issue. I mean, if they own 4,000 homes, who is the individual that you can go talk to about a specific problem?
Excuse me, the plumbing's not working very well.
After getting outbid time and again, the Colliers say they've given up on Fishers.
Is the American dream still accessible?
I think the American dream is changing.
We all know that it's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe in it.
Our society may be going in that direction where we are getting further away from ownership, but I don't think it's the right direction.
I actually think Mr. Collier should be in charge of the country. His upbeat demeanour is exactly what we need right now. Okay, so this proxy war we're engaged in and the prosecution of Trump, which is a distraction from the fact that centralized government's never going to do anything about issues that are affecting me and you. Isn't that right?
They've put in a bid on a home in a town farther out. Their American dream modified, not broken.
It's a terrible dream of compromise and centralized corruption and financial brutality and faceless landlords. We've modified the American dream now, so it's got this scary, faceless landlord in it. The single-family rental industry got its start with government backing in the fallout after the 2008 financial crisis. Never let a good crisis go to waste. The thing we learned here is you can really, really exploit single families. Well done. Lesson learned. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and will I be going to prison for my part in all this financial travesty? No, just focus on exploiting those single families, as I say. It was that rare opportunity that attracted the institutions to build a portfolio out of these foreclosed properties, said Stephen Zhao, an assistant professor of finance and managerial economics at the University of Texas, Dallas. It's another example of what's a crisis to ordinary Americans or people across the world being an opportunity to those dominant financial interests. After the criminality of 2008, where you bowed out the people that plunged your country and you personally into economic despair, what's outrageous is your tax dollars are helping Wall Street buy up single-family homes, Representative Ro Khanna said in an interview with CNBC. Yeah, that is outrageous, isn't it? It's not like they're brilliant business and economic minds. They're just people that are operating in a legislative space that is deliberately unregulated, that allows what is essentially a type of criminality to take place. In the midst of this hysteria around the Trump trial, stuff that should be a crime, like the deregulated corruption that led to 2008, the exploitation that's going to lead to your home likely being owned by a Wall Street bank instead of you or your children. No one's doing anything about that, and we participate in it. Since the early 2010s, Tricon Residential, Progress Residential, American Homes for Rent, and Invitation Homes have each bought thousands of homes. Some of these companies are financed by private equity firms such as Blackstone and investment managers such as Pretium Partners. It's almost a captive market, said Jordan Ash, Director of Labour, Jobs and Housing at the Private Equity Stakeholder Project. They've been very explicit about how people are shut out of a home buying market and are going to be perpetual renters. From a general, moral and philosophical perspective, sense that what you want is authority and control in your own life. This particular issue seems to suggest that what's happening is that power and resources are becoming increasingly centralised. This is exactly what they mean when they say you will own nothing and you will be happy. They like to pretend, oh, it's just a conference, it's just a bit of fun. Oh, it doesn't matter that both the leader of your country and the leader of the opposition of your country are all going there and the biggest companies in the world are all going there. I'm not suggesting it's anything conspiratorial. I'm not suggesting it's anything other than PR for the globalist agenda, so that the solutions to the problems we all face can always be presented in a way that won't disrupt the agenda of the powerful. That's exactly what I'm suggesting it is. The prices in some Sunbelt markets have outpaced national figures for rent inflation. Between January 2020 and January 2023, rents for a two-bed detached home increased about 44% in Tampa, Florida, 43% in Phoenix, and 35% near Atlanta. That's compared with a 24% increase nationwide. So not only are you not going to own your home, you're going to be extortionately overcharged for your rent. This is ultimately another one of those wealth transfer techniques where low income, ordinary folks, middle class folks all will pay more money for stuff and it will aggregate in the hands of the elite. It's plainly that. It's a technique to do that and it's being soft sold to us. Home ownership is the main way in this country that people build wealth. And while in some ways it may not look very different if someone is renting or owning a home, financially it's very significant both for that individual family and for communities, whether or not they do own the home. Part of the problem with private equity involved in housing is that they're in it for the short term, Ash continued. Their goal is to take a company, increase cash flow in order then to sell it or to take it public, which they did in the case of Invitation Homes. Unlike smaller landlords who are still looking to have a profit, may be in it for the long term and see it as a long-term investment, are more concerned in terms of stability, concerned in terms of satisfied tenants and wanting there to be less turnover. With private equity, it's really about maximizing the short-term returns. Once that kind of thing starts happening because of market forces in homes, you're ultimately moving towards a time where you live in a cell and are attached to a drip. And if you can't offer the machine something of value, you'll ultimately be criminalized, homeless, or executed. I mean, that's the general direction, isn't it? Before 2010, institutional landlords didn't exist in the single-family rental market. Now there are 25 to 30 of them. So it's just a new emergent market. Like 100 years ago, no one ate processed food. Now everyone eats processed food. It's not good for us. The general trajectory, while we're told it's progress, it's also centralizing and aggregating and accumulating wealth in a very particular direction. You recognize that, don't you? From 2007 to 2011, 4.7 million households lost homes to foreclosure and 1 million more to short sale. So that means that 2008 was a period of great opportunity and advantage. It's a bit like the pandemic, isn't it? Like the pandemic and the financial crisis crisis definitely have comparable components in that it was a devastating crisis if you were in a particular strata of society, but an incredibly lucrative opportunity if you were in another strata of society. Private equity firms developed new ways to secure credit, enabling them to leverage their equity and acquire an astonishing number of homes. After the 2008 crash, the unprecedented supply of cheap housing in good neighbourhoods made corporate single-family home management feasible for the first time. It's only regarded as a financial opportunity. That's homelessness from another perspective. Neighbourhoods that were formerly ownership neighbourhoods, that were one of the few ways that working-class families could build wealth and gain stability, are being slowly or not so slowly turned into renter communities, and not renter communities owned by mom-and-pop landlords, but by some of the biggest private equity firms in the world, says Peter Coons, the former Los Angeles director of the activist group Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. In some ways, I'm glad because it's now so magnified, amplified, and obvious that there is corruption, that it's affecting everybody. So whether you're sort of part of an underclass, ordinary working class, middle class, even affluent middle class, they're coming for you in the rhetoric of Donald Trump. What is really dangerous to tenants and communities is the full integration of housing within financial markets, says Maya Abood, who wrote her graduate thesis at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology on the single-family rental industry. Because of the way our financial markets are structured, stockholders expect ever-increasing returns. All of this creates so much pressure on the companies that even if they wanted to do the right thing, which there's no evidence that they do, all of the entanglements lead to an incentive of not investing in maintenance and transferring all the costs onto tenants. Blackstone spent over $5.5 million lobbying in 2022, with several members of Congress owning stocks in it. So once again, it's the same story. Centralizing financial interests in alliance with a government that they lobby, with people in Congress who own stocks and shares in their company, moving in a direction that is not beneficial to you and will eventually reach a tipping point where ordinary people are so disempowered we can no longer participate in the game. All the while, eyes are on Donald Trump for minor legislative foibles and failings, and if they're illegal and justice is consistent, anyone who breaks the law should be subject to the punishment that are associated with breaking those laws. But we all know that that's a political trial, and we all know that everyone benefits from the distraction that it provides, and that these kind of stories are the stories that are going to affect your life. This is going to come between you and owning a home, and ultimately your ability to organize and control your own life and resources.